Hey traders, welcome to another crypto market update. We'll be mainly looking at the crypto market, really, not really at global macro. We will look at the dollar just because it's so important to understand negative correlations between the US dollar, safe haven in terms of the kind of fear and certainty within the world. We saw that back in March, and when there's a risk on environment, S&P, NASDAQ, they're doing well, tech stocks are doing well, US dollars going down. We see usually crypto markets, especially BTC, do well. So we'll just be looking for the continuation of all that, but we're mainly primarily going to be looking at crypto. So we got BTC on the 4 hour in front of us. Before we get into the price action, I do want to look at the large time frame and then slowly work down. So let's actually go to a different chart just because I think it might be on this one. So we're going to be looking at the monthly chart. First, have a good understanding of where we've been and where we could potentially go in the future. So these horizontal dotted white lines are the previous all-time highs, and then there's a consolidation after. And we can see, obviously you can't exactly extrapolate what happened in the past and forecast that for the future, but it's not hard to assume that if we have a long drawn out consolidation like we had back in 2015 to 2016, kind of middle of 2016, and then the later part of 2016 and 2017 really started booming. We're seeing a similar type of situation right now where we had a long drawn out bear market after 2017's bull market right there, ended at the peak of 2017, started 2018, 20K, and then had that long bear market. I'm sure if you've been following Performante, we have been covering it for quite some time, obviously, since our inception, so which was kind of around here. So we've been basically covering this consolidation for a while, and we are now at the stage and phase where the bull market, in our opinion, has already begun. We've already broken the all-time high, now sitting at like 20, let's say 23.5K, and we are looking to continue the overall impulsive push that we are seeing. Yes, there will be pullbacks. We're going to be looking out for those, but when we're working on our top-down approach, we want to understand some actionable things we can take in right now. In my opinion, we are seeing consolidation sideways, and we are looking for a potential next push to the upside. So overall, we do think there could be easily 100K Bitcoin in 2021. We're looking at maybe at the end of the bull market, like 200K plus 250 for one Bitcoin. So, not unthinkable in my personal opinion. If you look at that previous all-time high, this is the break from here. So I just took that. And then if we're looking at what happened last time, if we're getting the same big push, and we got to understand that this is the retail market primarily. We're now seeing institutions coming. We're seeing funds like Grayscale have single asset exposure that allows both institutional as well as just individual people who want to gain exposure without the difficulties of buying a ledger, buying another hardware wallet, and then being able to transfer funds. So overall, there's going to be a reduction in friction of getting into the cryptocurrency market for overall people, and then for institutions and firms especially. They also have a lot more ease, as well as there's that next push where people are actually looking at Bitcoin as a safe haven against inflation and US dollar currency proliferation, because the central banks don't really have another option. They have to keep interest rates and federal funds rates primarily at zero, basically, in order to stimulate the economy, and also have to provide stimulus by sending individuals checks. Depending on what status and all that stuff, it does change, but overall we are seeing this stimulus continuation occur, and I don't think there's anything stopping it, because right now there's so many companies that are basically needing 0% rates or very close to that in order for them to survive, because they have so much debt they can't pay it off, and they need to borrow more money very cheaply in order for them to sustain the operations of the company. So right now there's a lot of what you call zombie companies, and we're going into a stage where the only situation that they survive in is if interest rates are low. So they need to continue this momentum unless they want to basically absolutely drop the economy as well as the stock market primarily, and that's not going to happen because so many trust funds and primarily retirement funds that are really, really needing the market to continue to move to the upside. A lot of funds for unions and retirees and pensions are like 70% of what they should be, or even less. Some are 90 and almost at 100, or if not at 100, but there are a significant amount that are less. So the continuation is going to be going forward, and that's the kind of overall global macro sense. I didn't think that we were going to go into it, but yeah, I thought it was going to be something that was a little bit shorter. But I think it's really important to understand the fundamentals on a broad perspective of why cryptocurrencies is primarily Bitcoin is such a important asset to have in a portfolio. So we're now going to go into a smaller time frame. Let's go, that's not really updated. Let's go into the daily time frame here. And then this was the major push that we were initially implying is the start of the bull market impulsive push right here when we pushed above 10K, pulled back, retested this previous resistance as a new level of support, and this was also a zone of confluence like so. We put that down a little bit lower. We can connect the higher lows as well as this high right here, so more like so. And then we saw a really nice tight squeeze, tight contraction in the volatility, and then we got our first impulsive push, breaking the previous resistance as a new level of support. And then we saw a nice impulsive push. So definitely notified everyone within our Discord on that one. Hopefully you were able to profit from around 11.5, somewhere around there. So yeah, hopefully you've been on this nice rocket ship. If you are not, we still are looking for a continuation pattern here. So we saw our first impulsive push. So let's get our snip and discuss a little bit further into the market structure that we're seeing on the daily chart. And then we'll look at the smaller time frame. Actually, I'm going to quickly shrink this up like so we can actually use the volume to our advantage. So there was definitely quite a bit of sell pressure kind of in the later half of November, but overall we were seeing the buy pressure much greater than the sell pressure in the consolidation. So this is the consolidation. We see not much sell pressure, and then when the bullish pushes come, we see a tremendous amount of buy pressure compared to the sell pressure. So overall we do see volume accumulation, which is definitely evident within the volume as well as the fundamentals. Looking at Grayscale buying like twice the amount of Bitcoin mined in a month, which is pretty substantial. But yeah, this was a big sell day. A lot of people were scared, a lot of people were worried, but the price was able to hold this previous level of resistance as a new level of support and hold that zone right there. And then we contracted deeper right there. We will look at that within the smaller time frames, but that's what happened. And this was the first impulsive push after our major break and retest right here. And this was our first push, and then we saw our first consolidation and continuation pattern right here. And this was a nice symmetrical triangle where we saw a high, a marginally higher high. We were a little bit worried here. We were very patient, and then we saw a nice squeeze where we saw lower high, and then we saw a little squeeze, move to the downside. No worries, we were still bullish because we saw a higher low from this low, so we connected the higher lows, creating a series of higher lows for our symmetrical triangle, and then that was a structure right there. So we saw a break above this descending trend line right here, nice little retest, and then a massive moonshot to the 23-ish K zone. So we're going to be looking at that. That's the push, consolidation, and then this is our push. And then we can see within the pushes, we see nice continuation pattern right here, nice continuation pattern right here, just a zone where there's some hesitation with the momentum, but we know that there's strong buy pressure. The volume's accumulating. Overall, the fundamentals are very strong. There's a lot of things going for it. It's in a impulsive push on a large time frame. So in my opinion, we are seeing something similar to a consolidation in our major impulsive push. This was the major consolidation. So if we're looking at it from a large time frame, we see our impulsive push, our consolidation in our impulsive push, and then when we're looking at it from a smaller time frame, we see our impulse push, consolidation, impulse push. So overall, we are obviously seeing fractal patterns because that's what the market is, but we're now going to be looking at this pattern, which kind of looks similar to what we saw here on a larger time frame. So let's now go on to the 6-hour chart. And yes, at a certain point, there will be a significant pullback, but this looks great. Like to me, it doesn't really make sense that everyone should be bullish, or sorry, bearish when the market just trends down slightly for a short amount of time. Like 15% down, yeah, that does sound bad, but where you came from, you're at 71%. So you can't expect the market, especially such a volatile one as BTC, to be not down 5% one day, even in a bullish impulsive push, and you can still be completely okay. That's why you can't use too much leverage. Like, look at this 7-8% move to the downside at a certain point, but you're still in an impulsive push from this zone. Should you sell? Well, no, you're still in an impulsive push, right? At the end of the day, you want to maximize every single entry you're taking if you're swing trading, because it's not like you're taking entries every single day. So you want to be able to go through the small trial and tribulations that come along with an impulsive push. So if you haven't entered right here, to be completely honest, I did think that there was going to be some hesitation or a pullback right here. Did not come. So, that is the market. You're not going to get a total entry and a full entry on every single trade. But hey, that is totally okay. We're going to be looking for a nice continuation pattern right here. And overall, what happened here, we already did talk about it within the daily chart, but let's just talk about it on the 6 hour. We saw marginally higher highs, marginally higher lows. And then once we broke this zone right here, that's a little bit worrying for sure, because we see a nice support and the nice higher lows, broke the higher lows, made a lower low, which wasn't great, but we always like to look at previous zones of resistance and support. So this was a resistance, turned into a new support, and then it continued the overall trend to the upside. And right when we came to this zone on a large time frame, we saw wicks, candle closures or wicks, depending on what time frame you're looking at. And even in this time, you do see lots of wicks to the downside at a major zone, and then this 16K zone was a previous major level of significance. So it does prove to be a strong level before, could be a strong level in the future, or the current price action when we were seeing a downside. And it did hold really nicely. And then when we are looking at a really small time frame, we can see it was a double bottom. So it went down once, twice, held the previous low, so it did not make a lower low. It actually made a higher low, which was pretty bullish. And then once we broke that previous support right here, new level of resistance, we saw a higher high, which is very significant. Broke that previous high. Didn't make a extremely significant higher high, but it was a higher high, which proved that the bulls were still looking to enter in the market, still has significant interest. And we can see this bullish push that crawled out of the grave here. Below this level of support is extremely strong. It just absolutely rallied right back up to form a higher high. So there was buyers who were looking to enter and entered after it broke that high. Lots of buy pressure, right? Not so much with the overall volume we do see right here, decent amount, but I think if we maybe, there's not much. Let's just go like that and then take a picture again. All right, so then we discussed this marginally higher high, and then we saw this nice triangle. And this is why we always like to wait for confirmation, because this was a triangle that we were anticipating could go either way. If this was a triangle that broke to the upside like that, we were looking to get in because this is a higher high, made a higher low from this low right here. So you could say impulsive push, corrective move, consolidation, and impulsive push. That was a potential option, but it did not play out. So we did not actually come into the market just because it didn't break this zone, broke to the downside, and then we had to stay patient a little bit longer. Now we saw a nice higher low from this low. So then we saw this consolidation right here, this low, and then this higher low. So we just connected the higher lows, creating our ascending support zone. 3 zones is all it takes to for us to have a valid ascending zone or descending zone. And then looking at this descending zone right here, we just continued this descending zone from the 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. And then we broke that very well, and then we see hesitation right there. And the highest level of confirmation would be if you got a break and then a retest and then a rally. We're ideally looking for that retest. It doesn't always come, but that would be the highest level of confirmation. But overall, great looking pattern, strong push to the upside. This is a continuational push similar to what we saw right here. Very strong impulsive push, consolidation, and then your next impulsive push. So this is going to be the consolidation and then the next impulsive push. Let's now go on to the 2 hour to discuss this a little bit more. All right. So this was our strong push after a consolidation zone. We saw a nice little squeeze right here. Nice little move to the upside. A little bit worrying because I thought it was going to go to at least a little bit over 24.5K, but did not occur. The bears slammed it down pretty good. So what we saw was a support right here, which was kind of our last stand from this squeeze right here. And once it broke below it, we were very hesitant and we were very patient. We called to hold off on the market for a moment, see what it's doing. But look at this huge hammer, massive wick to the downside, and basically it opened and closed at the same price. So buy pressure was able to come back in after the sell pressure initially slammed it down. Very bullish. And then on the double bottom, which is the second bottom, there was a higher low. So we made a series of higher lows, which is also very bullish because the buyers were able to hold the price at a higher point. Obviously, that definitely indicates more bullish activity in the overall market. And then we broke this previous high, making a higher high. So we have a series of higher lows and higher highs. Really good to see. And then we made a little bit of a move up. Not a whole lot of respect towards much other than this overall resistance and overall support. So right now we were initially looking at it just as a horizontal zone, like a sideways channel, and then we were going to see what happens. And then we actually made a higher low. And then once we started to see that higher low come in, so from this low and then this higher low, we start to draw an ascending trend line. I would like to see one more rejection of this resistance before we can validate this descending zone as a resistance area. But overall, we are going to be looking at this as a potential continuation pattern with a nice little squeeze here. And then we'll be looking for a third validation of this resistance. 1, 2, and then a third one. Once we see that validation, we're looking for a break and retest of this previous high right here as a new level of support. Ideally, you could put a nice feeler entry beforehand, so you don't get not an entry, like you don't miss out on any opportunities because you are scoping this out for days. So you really want to make it worthwhile. So having a feeler entry or staggering your entries would definitely not be a bad idea. Sometimes these rips can occur. You will never have a guarantee of a pullback. That's just a part of being in the markets. So feeler trades are really good opportunities. Like you saw a nice squeeze here. Once you started to see that higher low, or if you're just going to be expecting a potential squeeze, you could just put it somewhere in here, and then you can put a stop loss, and if it rips, it rips, and if it pulls back, you can then put your full entry, and then you can really start to take off. So that's going to be the possibilities for entries. That would be up to you to strategize and decide and backtest what works best for you. Obviously, some are more, I guess you could say, mechanical, and some more are less mechanical, so depends on the characteristics of each trader. But overall, that's going to be the outlook that we have within the markets. There is we see currently a nice symmetrical triangle. We could look at a different time frame, but this is basically the entry time frame of the hour for me, at least for swing trades. So we're not really going to go much further than this. In terms of volume on the 4 hour, it to me does look a little bit more bullish. 1 hour looks not the best, but especially the 4 hour. And that's why looking at different time frames, yes, it's a little bit biased to some degree because you could kind of pick the time frame, but I think the 4 hour represents this area really well. And it's good to look at different time frames, definitely. But I just thought that this represented what we're going to talk about here pretty well. So where you see that overall, you can argue that this is still decreasing buy pressure, but especially just within the consolidations, somewhere around there, we see a decent amount of sell pressure that dumped it down initially, but overall, other than this move, you see more accumulation, especially recently. We're seeing buy pressure here, buy pressure increase, buy pressure increase. Whereas the sell pressure, there was an initial massive sell bar right there, and there's another one here, and there's another one right here. So since the consolidation, you're seeing sellers, hopefully you see one more little red bar, decrease. That would be the ideal situation, which it does look like it is presenting. And then on the buy side, overall, you see the buy pressure on the way up is more significant on the sell pressure on the way down. So that's great to see. This sell bar wouldn't be ideal because if it was like, let's say here, you can say buy pressure is greater than sell pressure. That would be the perfect situation in terms of the volume, but it did hold, so the price action is the king, and it did hold, which is great to see. But we would be ideally looking for one more little impulse push if it just popped up, and then you got a lot of buy pressure, and then maybe like a little bar of sell pressure, or maybe before the pop you get a little bit of sell pressure, just so you get the shape where buy pressure is increasing and sell pressure is decreasing. That is the ideal situation, because you see buyers anticipate the impulse push and accumulate, and then sellers are basically getting less and less confident, and they're just running out, right? If you're a seller, you only have so many coins that you're going to sell. You can only distribute so much into the market before you have none left, and then at a certain point, there are less sellers and more buyers, and that's where that shift occurs. Where there's that breakout, there's that shift where there's not enough sellers and there's a lot of buyers, and that's how the price moves to the upside, right? There has to be, each seller has to sell to a buyer, and each buyer has to buy from a seller, and that's what exchanges and brokers do, is connect buyers and sellers and facilitate that transaction. So it happens pretty quickly. Obviously there's algos and stuff, but we do think that if it does pop to the upside and that overall buy pressure is increasing, we already see that sell pressure decreasing, I think that could be a really good recipe for the next leg up after our impulse consolidation, which is our market breadth, and then we're going to see our next impulsive push to the upside. So we're going to be looking out for opportunities. Next thing we're going to be looking at is the Bitcoin dominance, because it relates so well. We could be seeing, to be honest, Bitcoin dominance just move to the upside more and more right now, where we see nice breakout, where we see the descending zone right here connect the lower highs, especially so well during kind of January 2020 and late 2019. Very well respected all the way through May and spring there in 2020. And then we see a series of lower lows as well. So we're seeing a nice slow descent of the BTC dominance. And this was kind of from the summer when BTC really shot up, went to like 14K. Right around here, this move right here, February, March, April, May, June, right around there is when the Bitcoin dominance started to move to the downside, just because when there are bull markets, when there are a lot of speculators in the market that are willing to speculate and take on more risk with altcoins, the BTC dominance goes down, right? Because there's going to be more market cap for alts. But in this situation, we actually see Bitcoin dominance moving to the upside. So then there's going to be less interest in altcoins that are more speculative, and people are putting more money into BTC. And I think this is coming from more the institutions, because a lot of institutions aren't going to be putting money in not liquid assets. Even Bitcoin isn't super liquid to them. So at the end of the day, yes, they could be more functional, more efficient for transacting, but they see Bitcoin as a store of value and a hedge against inflation and currency proliferation globally. So I view that as a different form of investment than, let's say, like using a project as a type of transactional tool. I guess like XRP, for example, very, very low fees. It's faster compared to Bitcoin. So there are projects that are better suited for transactions, and Bitcoin is not one of them. It's very robust in terms of its workings. It's functional for what it does, store value. But as a currency, I don't think it's there. So I think institutions are finally understanding that, and they are buying Bitcoin for the right reasons. And this is the Bitcoin institutional boom that I think is coming, because a lot of people in 2017 were talking about it, but not a lot of institutions were actually taking action. And at this point, we see so many institutions start to actually adopt BTC, put it in their portfolio, even like insurance funds, Mass Mutual. I don't know if they're a pension fund or insurance fund, but they are a fund that is very, I would say, new to the space. They're usually traditional, not really in disruptive technologies, really. So it'd be interesting to see if more massive funds come in, and primarily I think they will go in BTC. So this dominance will be increasing. So we will primarily be looking at BTC like always, and then depending on the total to the Bitcoin dominance, as well as just the price action of the alts, we'll be looking at alts as well. But Bitcoin's always the number one thing to look at within the cryptocurrency market, because it just has so much dominance, 69.5%, right? Pretty phenomenal. So that's going to be Bitcoin dominance. I think we will look at the US dollar now. Not really going to be looking at the total to today. Let's make BTC big, go on the 2 hour, and we'll be seeing how it looks. All right, next thing we're going to be looking at is the US dollar. Very important ticker, DXY, to be looking at for the strength or weakness of the dollar. So we'll be looking at the large time frame first. We do like to go over this quite frequently, but we do understand the extreme significance of the zone that we're coming to. Is 88, 89-ish is such a major zone. And we can see it was a previous major low for the double top, which we will take a picture of right here. So since around March of 2020, we've been in a bearish trend, and this is the confirmation of the double top. This is the second top, this is the first top, and if we pass that, we're going to be really, really moving to the downside. That zone, maybe to like 80s, which is pretty significant. And if we're moving at that point all the way down to there, sound money is going to be doing really well. And I think Bitcoin primarily is going to be doing really well. So if we're looking at this from a large time frame, in my opinion, this looks super bearish. We'll probably get some hesitancy at that zone, but if we start trending down, I think there will be a massive puke to the downside, and Bitcoin, silver, gold will be doing well. I think I'll be primarily looking more at silver, more so than gold, just because it's been more buoyant, it's been more bullish. The price action has been just much more clear, much more, I would say, easy to understand and more respectful of the price action structures that I look for. So I'll be primarily looking at silver, but always I like to look at gold. But BTC is going to be the main one if we are able to get this double top to complete. So we'll see how that goes. Now on a smaller time frame, let's look at the 6 hour chart. This is the zone of discussion right here, 89, 88. So we're just continuing our overall momentum to the downside. When we look at what happened right here, this is our impulsive push, this is our corrective push, and then we see one retest, two retest, and then our next impulsive push. This is a nice consolidation for our next impulsive push to reach us to that next level. So right now we saw a nice zone like that, and then we saw a consolidation, push, pull, first validation, second validation, and I haven't drawn it in yet, but I can definitely see a nice zone like that we're entering. So you can go like that, you can go like that, boom, just like we saw right here, right? We see a squeeze, we see a push, squeeze, push, squeeze, and then we're going to see our next push right here for the US dollar weakness. So it is setting up for Bitcoin move to the upside, dollar move to the downside. Right there. I think that's going to be the next push to the downside. If it does move to the upside, obviously, I think that's going to be me being wrong. We will have to wait for confirmation, but if it starts to look like it's trending down, if we see some of this, some of the breaks and some of the retests on the smaller time frame, that's a recipe for Bitcoin moving to the upside and us doing pretty well with our price action structures and market, I would say, scenario casting or outlooks. So that's going to be the US dollar. Not a ton more on that one. Hopefully you understand what I'm talking about with the squeeze right here, because we see this descending zone holding the series of lower highs, and we also see this zone right here. Squeeze, create a nice triangle, and then we see a very similar situation like so. So right now, I think what's going to happen is, let's get our pattern right here. So we're like seeing something like this. I think we're going to do something like that. So from December until like, I don't know, early January, we could see a nice little push. Could melt down all the way into the 88 range right there, just because it's so close to it. It pulls the price. Major levels pull the price, but also repel the price when they're close to them. So they'll pull it back, consolidate, and then repel it, and then really push to the upside or downside. So it's not just one way. So that's going to be the overall approach that we are going to be taking for this upcoming kind of next strong push that we are anticipating. All right, a little bit of information on XRP. Hopefully you've been keeping up with our podcast. We have been talking about and covering the SEC lawsuit Security and Exchange Commission, if you do not know, with Ripple Labs, which is the company behind XRP, which is the token that we are looking at right here. Let's take a good picture of this. So we're not really going to be talking about the fundamentals because we always do on our podcast, so definitely check them out. We have been covering Ripple quite a bit within the recent ones. It's even been the title, so definitely check that out. When we are looking at this zone right here, 30-cent level, major level of resistance, turns into strong level of support. Could not be more clear. It is literally clear as day on any look at any exchange. You'll see that 30-cent zone be a major level of support and resistance. And then especially right here, we're going to be looking at this pretty well because we see support, turn into resistance. And then again, resistance, made lower lows, pulls back one more time, smashed yet again for a resistance, now they're again lower lows. And then you start to see this nice climb, right? You see some consolidation, you see a higher low, you see a higher low, yet again smashed by this 30-cent range. So this level is a very important level for the bears to hold. And when it broke, it smashed through it. Look how aggressive this push was, all the way to basically 80 cents. From 30 cents, monumental move to the upside, but it retraced all the way back and gave back all its gains to drop even further than its higher low. So we have seen it close. Sorry, not yet. We have seen it close on the daily here, but we have not seen it close on the weekly. So we are still waiting for that. It's 3 days, but we are seeing some buy pressure and buy activity hold this zone of confluence where you see a low, a significant low, a higher low, and then if it closes, I like to view, let's say this was the support zone, even if the wick came all the way down here and then this was your candle, I'd still classify that as an extremely valid zone because the bulls brought it right back up and closed it perfectly within that buy area. So I'm going to be looking for that and seeing if this weekly candle, which still has 3 days left, will actually close at that area. If it does, and if the FUD kind of ends, that could be an option where this could really just be a pullback in such a major zone of confluence for buy pressure, because there's that descending zone, that's number 1, there's that ascending zone, that's number 2, and then there's a horizontal zone, that's number 3, all within that 30-cent level. So a lot of factors to consider, but we have to obviously look at the fundamentals, because if this is not ending for XRP, and if they win, that's obviously like a, what was it, $1.3 billion, $1.9 billion securities, unregistered security purchases, or something along the lines of that. I don't exactly remember the exact lawsuit, but they are in a lot of trouble if they lose. So we'll see how that goes. It's not going to drain them, but it's like a third of their market cap or something similar to that. I don't exactly know, but yeah, pretty bad. We will update everyone on that, and that I think will be the end of this video. Not trying to keep it too long, just because it's hard to hold people's attention if it's gonna be longer than, like, I don't know, let's say 45 minutes. So thank you very much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you found this useful, beneficial, enjoyable to watch. We will go over some different coins within another video that we will provide for just the cryptocurrency, or sorry, the Performante Premium members for the altcoins there. So definitely stay tuned for that if you're a Performante member, Performante Premium member. If you are not, we do offer videos that go in depth into the altcoins that we are looking at, as well as suggestions for any of the coins that any of our members want us to look at. So definitely some good value there, and I will end it off there. Thank you very much for coming again. Hopefully you have a wonderful Christmas. We will be making a podcast a little bit later today, so we will be saying happy Merry Christmas to everyone. And yeah, it's been a good year for sure. I am very excited for 2021. A lot of very exciting things for Performante, as well as just, I think, in the markets. I think it's a really important time to be in the markets and be aware and understand why sound money could be a massive opportunity for people who are prepared. So we're going to try to keep everyone updated. And until then, for the podcast, I hope everyone has a great 24th of December.